The Training Beta podcast is an offshoot of a website, trainingbeta.com, which is a hub of resources for rock climbers. Over there, we have online training programs for climbers of all abilities, whether you're a boulderer or a route climber. We have them in ebook form or subscription form. We also have coaches Alex and Matt who see people remotely from all over the world to help them reach their goals in climbing by creating individualized plans for them. We also have nutrition services with me and mindset coaching with me. I have been certified in both of those things and work with climbers exclusively. You can find everything at trainingbeta.com, and we hope to see you over there. This is the Training Beta podcast, and I'm your host, Neely Quinn. Thanks for joining me for another episode all about rock climbing, training, and today we're going to be talking about a climbing trip that Coach Matt Pincus recently went on. He went to Spain, and he's going to tell you all about his intentions for the trip and how they didn't really pan out, which I'm sure a lot of us have had happen, where we train hard and we prepare and we have hopes and dreams for a trip and things just happen and it doesn't work out. So Matt's going to talk about what happened on his trip to Margalef and what he learned about himself and about climbing in general when that kind of trip happens. So Matt is taking a few new clients right now. He has worked with hundreds of climbers all over the world, helping them reach their goals with either bouldering or sport climbing. And he's doing a discount right now on his services, which he very rarely does. So it's 12 weeks of coaching. So this will consist of basically 3 months of coaching with him. So you'll get 3 4-week training plans, and you'll have continuous feedback and communication with him on the app True Coach, which is where your plans will live. You'll also get 3 Zoom calls. One is an initial 90-minute call, and then 2 additional hour-long calls to be used throughout the 12 weeks. So you can find that at a discounted rate of $260 per month. Normally it's $295 per month, so this is the lowest he's actually ever gone. And he's taking about 6 new clients, and you can find that discount at trainingbeta.com/12 weeks, and that's all one word. So if you like what you hear from Matt and you like his style and you want to work with him and you want him to help you reach your own goals, you can do that at trainingbeta.com/12 weeks. Or if you just want to work with him on a month-to-month basis, you can do that. And you can find all of his services at trainingbeta.com/Matt. All right, without further ado, here is Matt Pincus, and I'll talk to you on the other side. Enjoy. All right, welcome back to the show, Matt. How's it going?
It's going really well, Neely. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here again.
Yeah, for sure. So today's going to be a little bit different. We're not talking about like a specific coaching or training topic. We're just talking about a trip that you recently took and how it went, which is cool. I think that a lot of people really like hearing about other people's trips and what they learned and what they did. We like like living vicariously through each other. But and I haven't even talked to you about this. I have no idea how your trip was, so I'm excited to learn too. So, tell me what we're talking about today. What yeah.
Yeah, so I just went on a almost 7-week trip to Margalef, Spain. So yeah, we're going to talk about how that went. And my thinking here is, first we'll kind of talk about the trip and how it went, and that's sort of me just talking as me, the climber. And then I've obviously been thinking about and my trip and trying to digest it since I've been home. I've been home like a week. Um, and so I've tried to pull together some like I don't know, takeaways. And so maybe that's like a bit more putting the coach hat back on.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
but yeah, I'll say in advance, I doubt any of this is going to be super coherent. It's all still relatively fresh for me. So uh, it might be rambly. But yeah, this is just kind of my honest feelings and takeaways from my trip so far.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell me, first of all, like you decided to go to Margalef, and what were your intentions for the trip?
My intentions for the trip were definitely the main goal was to climb 514. I wanted to make sure I did a 514 route. Um, the reason we chose to go to Margalef, other than it just being a popular and amazing climbing destination, is it's sort of famous as a pocket climbing area. I live in Lander, Wyoming, which is also a pocket climbing area. So this felt like even though I haven't been to Margalef before this trip, it felt like a reasonable chance that it would be an area where I'd be able to climb hard, and sort of adapt quickly to the style.
Yeah,
Kind of,
you were kind of like playing to your strengths.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Unabashedly so, which I think is totally legit to try to do.
And why was your goal to climb 514?
Well, it's a grade that I focus a lot of my time on. It's hard for me. I've climbed a good chunk of them at this point, but it's not something that happens for me every day. Um, it represents a level at which I know I'm going to have a sort of a red point projecting experience. Um, and so I knew that's what I wanted to do. So on one side, that's sort of the experience I wanted. On the other side, um, this was my fourth, I think, trip to Spain. And I've been close on some other 514 routes in Spain and in Europe, but I haven't actually done any of them. So it was also a kind of wanting to sort of tick that box for myself of climbing 514 level route in Europe.
So you kind of were just trying to clean up some loose ends and challenge yourself on a specific kind of level.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like I feel like that's like some massive thing that I've put a ton of effort into and keep falling short of or anything like that. But it's the level I try to be operating at when I'm really pushing myself sport climbing. And so if you're going to go on an overseas trip, I think there's lots of ways to approach that, but usually it kind of breaks down into either the category of trying to climb a bunch of easier relative for you routes or focus your efforts on a harder route. And this was a trip where I really wanted to focus my efforts on a harder route.
And did you have a route in mind or several to choose from?
Sort of. Like anyone who's psyched about going on a trip, I did some research, looked through the guidebook, watched some videos online, read comments on 8A and such things. And so I sort of I'd say I had a starting point for maybe routes I'd want to check out, but because I hadn't been before, it wasn't like returning to a route I'd climbed on or an area I'd been to where I was like, oh yeah, it's definitely going to be this one. It was more open-ended, just like, cool, I'm going to check out some routes. I wanted to make sure I went up at least more than one 514 route. Like I wanted to check out more than one before just being like, well, yeah, I tried this one. And then I spent the whole trip on it. So there were a couple routes I had picked out to check out first, and I did, but they weren't it wasn't set in stone.
And then can we skip to the end and you tell us, did you reach your goal?
Oh, not even close. Yeah, no, I mean, that's like a slight exaggeration. But no, I didn't send. So yeah, on paper, it really wasn't a great trip results wise. I almost one hung, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, like there was like a 2 move difference between my high point and then the starting point of my low point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why do you think that happened? Tell me what went on.
That's a really good question. Well, the main thing that happened was it rained a lot for about a month of our trip. We were able to climb a lot. Like we didn't have many forced rest days where we couldn't go climbing at all. But it literally started raining before I reached the anchor of the first pitch I did, our first day in Margalef. And it essentially continued for a month straight.
And everything wasn't seeping? Was everything wet?
Varying degrees of dryness. So the route I ended up climbing on the most and put the most effort into is called the Via del Kim. It's at the Finestra sector. It's 14A. And I'd say for most of those 4 weeks, it was the first 4 weeks. Our trip was originally going to be 4 weeks. I ended up extending a little bit because the weather got better. It was climbable in that a couple people did it, but it was never fully dry. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and when you're climbing sort of at your limit, it's you kind of need good conditions.
Yeah, and so that was the bigger thing. More than at first we were sort of just dealing with surface runoff. It would rain, the water would run down the wall, but then it wasn't like it was just pouring rain all day every day. But it would be intermittent storms, and then we just never had a prolonged period of better, drier weather. But it would dry out enough that we could climb. And then obviously when it's limestone, once it rains for that much for that long, then we started dealing with some seepage as well. Mm-hmm. But there was enough dry on the route, and that level is hard enough for me that I was able to still kind of go through the process, and keep working, keep learning, keep making progress on it. But the bigger issue was it was in just really bad conditions. And so we were, 60 to 100% humidity basically the whole time. Ugh. Yeah, it was pretty gross. Which is A, gross, makes things feel harder. B, Margalef is kind of like sharp, small pockets. And so if you're also then sliding around on them because it's humid and or they're wet, your skin takes a bit more of a beating than it already would anyway. So that wasn't really helping our cause either.
Yeah, totally.
So I don't know that I would have sent for sure if it had been, 62 degrees and breezy the entire trip. But I certainly think I would have had a better chance.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think, that's not to be, I just kind of can't totally write that off.
I mean, I feel like if it had been me, I don't know, I would have considered changing my goal and just being well, what is climbable? What is within my, ability that makes this feel like a productive, fun trip?
Yeah.
Did you do that at all?
I mean, I did some other routes, for sure. I did a really good 13B, did another 13A, and I certainly had those feelings. I had promised myself beforehand though that I really wanted to kind of stay the course with this trip. And also it wasn't like I had picked out this one particular route. It was wet and seeping and there were lots of other dry, better options around. Right. Yeah. So if you're sort of going to be climbing on the dry sections of routes, then it might as well be on the dry sections of hard routes that you're projecting rather than routes that you think you would do sort of quickly if they were dry. Even the 8A I ended up doing, the whole, the bulk of it, of the hard climbing was dry, but the whole upper crux was every hand and foot was wet when I climbed it.
Yeah.
And you're okay, I can do that. I can get away with that at 8A because it's enough below my limit, but at 8B plus at 14A, I definitely can't. So you're kind of well, at least I felt like I was like working towards the goal. And like, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, maybe I would have played it differently. But we also were like, wrongfully, but we were assuming that it wasn't going to stay crappy weather for an entire month, right? Yeah. So it was sort of like, you're like, okay, I still have a lot to learn on this route. I have links to do. I need to build fitness on it. I need to, this isn't, 14A isn't a level I just show up and do in a couple tries. So I was like, okay, I can keep doing that work and it'll just feel better when it dries out and the conditions improve. And then and you're like, and for sure that has to be sooner rather than later. And then it just wasn't.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, I know that you had prepared some things
for
this talk. So yeah, tell me all the things.
Well, So yeah, that's like the summary of the trip, right? And I think that for a lot of people, maybe. Well, actually, I guess let's add one more thing. The weather did get better once we extended, so we did get a taste of what it's like to climb a Margalef with dry, good conditions, and it's quite a bit more fun and a lot better. So like, I'm very motivated to go back. I will almost definitely go back next year. Like, and I only say almost because a lot can happen in 12 months, but currently I'd say I'm like planning on it.
Cool.
But yeah, I guess for a lot of people, like if you had a trip like that, like going to Europe isn't like a small thing for me. I don't get to do it all the time. I've done it a handful of times, but it's not something I just like do on a whim. It's a big expense, both monetarily and time wise. It's time away from home. It's all the things. So I think a lot of people would be sort of like, oh, this was a bad trip. And I just kind of don't feel that way about it. I'm not like happy I didn't send, but I think it's the thing I've thought a lot about is like, I want to give myself the freedom to go try things that are hard for me and not do them. Like, cause if you don't, then you can't, then you're not actually going to try things that are hard for you. Right? Like, there's always, if you try a route anywhere near your limit, it comes with the potential of not doing it. Certainly when you attach a limited time frame of like a trip to it. And so I'm just like, I'm kind of okay with that. I'm happy with how I climbed on the trip. I'm happy with the decisions I made. I feel like I learned a lot sort of from it. And yeah, the main thing I'm sort of walking away from it feeling is like, I've been on a lot of trips and I don't want to define a trip as either being good or bad just based on if I send or not. Yeah, like I just don't think that's like a productive way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like, I obviously want to send, but it's just not the total end game. Or it's not the total decider, I guess, of like a good trip versus a bad trip.
So then what did make it, would you say it was a good trip?
Yeah. I mean, if we zoom back, like I went to Waco in January of this year for a couple weeks, but before that I hadn't traveled in a year, like at all. Like I hadn't left Lander. So it was pretty awesome to be in Europe again. It was pretty awesome to be there with friends. It was great to see an area and find an area that I feel like I can and like am excited to go back to and feel like I really can climb my hardest at. And like those are, and like be set up, if nothing else, I think I feel like two things. One, I'll be way more prepared for the next Margalef trip, like knowing the place, knowing the logistics, not even necessarily trying the same route again, necessarily, but just like the rock, what it's like to climb there, when to go, how to go, where to stay, where to shop, all those kind of things we take for granted that then you show up in a place you've never been to in a different country where you don't really speak the language and can feel really off-putting at first. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. Kind of got that a bit more sorted. And I definitely feel way fitter and like I'm climbing way better on a rope than I was before I left. So, I love it I don't think it's a effective training plan or like maybe the most cost-effective training plan to like fly to Europe every time you want to prepare for your home season. But, I'm pretty excited for a good spring season here now.
Yeah. Yeah. You got plenty of practice out there. You probably increased your endurance and your head game and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, from that perspective, like, yeah, I do feel like, it was I don't know, it's hard to say like, oh, it was a good trip. Like it was this like great productive thing, but I don't think it certainly wasn't a bad trip. Like I'm not walking away with this like really sour taste in my mouth or anything.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So, that's my main takeaway, on it is like, so that was sort of, I guess that's the piece of just me as a climber, just me sort of personally,
Mm-hmm.
and how I'm thinking about it. But I tried to like, you know, break down some more things that maybe are more applicable beyond just the specifics of this individual trip.
Yeah.
And the first one, and I had written this down in a note on my phone, like early in the trip, like maybe the second, I don't know, first or second week kind of thing. And it was sort of became a little like an internal mantra for myself throughout the trip. And I think it's really important is that like when I choose to whether to go on a trip, to try a hard route, to try to do a lot of routes, whatever it is, when you're like making intentional choices about your climbing, I think it's really important to want the experience and not just the results.
Yeah. Right.
So I think going as American climbers traveling to Europe, I think it's a really easy trap to fall into. Like European limestone, European sport climbing, there's a ton of it, right? A lot of it's really good, but for sure the thing is the quantity, right? There are just, I mean, you've been a bunch. There are routes everywhere. There's just so much. Like there are like 2,000 routes in Margalef or something, you know, and they're all like a 4-minute drive from town. You're like, wow, this is incredible. And so you can kind of get in your head these like European limestone dreams, but they can where you just like you show up, you're just going to be like swimming up tufas or bashing through pockets. Like the roots are so good, they're just going to climb themselves. And the reality is like hard roots are still hard, and like you still have to climb the rock climb. It doesn't fundamentally change the experience just because there's a really high quantity of high quality rock climbs in the place. Like they're still just rock climbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, that was an important sort of mantra for me because early in the trip, as we talked about, it's, you know, you show up, you're jet lagged, it's raining, you're like, you know, different food, sleep, all the things kind of feel stacked against you a little bit. And like you get on a hard route because, like I said, I wanted to make sure I tried several. So I tried the Via del Kim first, and then I also tried this 8C route or 14B route at a different cliff where we ended up climbing a bunch called Via Spidimodis. I put like 3 days of effort, I think, into that as well, and ended up sort of deciding that I had a better chance on the Via del Kim. But as I'm like working through like the initial phases of checking these routes out, like they felt really hard. And if you look at it from wanting the experience, not just the results, like if I just wanted to do a 514 route, which again, I would have been totally happy if I just like showed up and started banging them out. But the goal of the trip was to have like or one of the goals of the trip was to have this sort of projecting experience in Spain. And so if you want to try something hard, then it's a good thing when it feels hard initially. Because if it doesn't, then it's not going to be hard, right?
Right.
So I think that was like really helpful for me to just kind of like, especially in the face of like bad conditions and bad weather and like not even, you know, I think it was like 2 weeks or maybe even over 2 weeks before I even I went to the top of the Via del Kim completely for the second time. Like I think I went to the top on our second day and then it got really wet and it didn't dry out well enough to like, it kind of like, there was like a final boulder that was a little wet and then it sort of slabs out and it's, you know, it's not like crazy run out, but it's run out enough that I wasn't like, and I didn't know it well enough to be like, oh yeah, like be psyched on the idea of just like, I'm going to quest up there on this like wet, I don't know, it's maybe like 12 minus kind of slab. Just like, oh yeah, we'll see what happens and like take these wingers out of there. So like when you're sort of trying to sustain belief in your ability to do a route and you're like, yeah, I'm totally going to get this thing done. We probably have 2 more weeks or 2.5 more weeks. And you're like, I've actually only been to the anchor once. That gets a little harder to keep doing is the days go by. And so just kind of really focusing on the idea of just like, yeah, this is the experience I wanted. Yeah, I wish it was better weather, but it's okay. Like I'm making tangible progress. So that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, which whether you're on a trip or not, whenever you project something and it's at a certain level of your ability, like that's the attitude that
Right.
I think is going to be the most helpful.
For sure.
It's just like not resisting your reality that this is hard and that's hard, but that this is hard and that's what you want.
Right. Yeah. And I think it also like that helps you stay open to learning also, which is like an essential component of success in any projecting process, right? If you sort of are just fixated on the sensation of it feeling hard and like getting frustrated by that, then you maybe aren't like, you stand a better chance of missing learning the cues that are ultimately going to help you take something that felt really hard and make it feel more doable. Because you're just like annoyed that it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want to make it sound like I miss those cues all the time for days, and then check them out later. And I'm like, what am I doing? It's not that I don't get frustrated. Like there were plenty of times on this trip where I was just like, I can't believe it's raining again. Like I can't believe that I'm sucking this much on this route right now in these crappy conditions, and I'm just in Spain, like festering a little bit. So it's not all like just smiles and high fives, but I think it's like it does just like remembering the intention that I went into the trip with and the experience I wanted makes it a lot easier to kind of like stay in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah.
Any other takeaways for everyone?
So I think the next one is this idea that it takes time to adapt to a new area. We talked about it, like one of the main reasons that we chose to go on this trip to Margalef was that and I keep saying I was there with a couple of friends from Lander, and we chose to go because we thought we were playing to our strengths. Like, so you're like, all right, great. Like, let's go climb on. We're good on pockets. This is a pocket climbing area. Let's go do routes. Like, but even when you think you're stacking the deck in your favor, it still takes time. And adding in like jet lag and international travel just kind of highlights that. But I think it's really important to realize that, and not and like give yourself the days without letting it impact your belief in your abilities. So like, I didn't feel good climbing for the first couple days. Like I was in one of my coaching calls the other day, I was talking to an athlete I've been working with for a while. She was asking about the trip, and like this sort of topic came up, and I was describing like the first pitch we did. I think it's 11th C, and it's this like flow stony, like drippy, limestone kind of water runnel. And I'm like, still jet lag, don't really know which way is up, and like I did it, but it didn't feel. I was like, if this is 11B, I'm like sweaty, I'm pumped, I'm trying hard, and I wanted to climb 14A, like we're in trouble. So I think that like it's easy to like, and obviously, okay, that was first pitch, warming up, whatever. But it's not like it suddenly got way better that day either. It wasn't like, oh yeah, got the warm up out of the way, now I feel great, just like banging out routes. It still all kind of felt pretty crappy initially. And so if you let that sort of move the goalposts for your goal, like, so my plan was to climb 514 or try to, and if I had just like showed up and been like, oh my God, well, 511 feels terrible, and maybe I should just try to climb 513s, like 13A is the new plan. That's not, you're changing the intention and the experience you were after. And B, you're not really like, you're not giving yourself a chance to work your way into the trip.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think like, and we had talked about this in Waco as well on the trip before, where it's like we were saying like in Waco it basically takes 5 days. You gotta because it's like so physical, it's sharp, the skin like you gotta build skin, and so you're like okay, you just know that you're not gonna feel awesome for 5 days, and so instead of letting that piss you off, letting it make you think you suck, your training was bad, you should try easier things, or like change your goals for the trip. You should just be like, all right, I just got to get through these days, do what you can, and not totally destroy yourself. Like, don't destroy your skin. Don't get so beat up and so tired that, like, when that sixth day or, roughly rolls around, that then you're like, oh man, I, I have like 4 flappers, and I need 3 days off, to even consider feeling good again. It's just like just a little bit of patience on the front end, I think, pays. And so that can be on a trip, right? And I know that that's like, this applies more to longer trips. Like not everyone's going to have the luxury of that time. But I think it is a reality. But it also applies even just to like returning to an area to start a season, right? Like I mentioned Waco. I don't know, it was probably like my 10th or more. It's Waco trip in my life. It's an area I've spent a ton of time. And I still, every year I show up, I'm like, yep, don't feel awesome right away. And it's, but once I get through having those handful of days, then it's like, you kind of are like, oh, okay, now I feel good. You kind of work your way back in. And so it's just a good, if it's sort of unavoidable, then you might as well be prepared for it mentally. And so and just not put yourself through the mental anguish of questioning why it's happening.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, let it be what it is.
Yeah.
Know in advance that it's not going to feel good, that you are not a superhero.
And then like, there are times where I have showed up to an area and like sent right away or felt really good right away. And it's like, well, obviously enjoy that, right? I'm not saying it can never happen, but I think it's more important to just sort of like go in seeing that as the outlier. And hey, if it happens, enjoy it, but being sort of more prepared for the reality that'll probably take some time to adapt to a new place, get your skin right, get used to the style. It's like whether you're on a trip, like especially a longer trip, or you're going into a season, whether it's in a new place or returning to a place, just know that like the first handful of days probably aren't going to feel the best. If they do, great, but you should be prepared for them not to, and to not let that impact your belief in your form, your abilities, your fitness, your training, anything, because it can just take some time to kind of work your way back in.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
So next one that really struck me was that there are a lot of variables that go into creating a high level performance. Everything from just like being comfortable in the place, the conditions, your fitness, your training ahead of time, your skin, like the list goes on and on and on. And I think the reason this popped into my head is like there were a lot of really strong climbers at Margalef during the 6 weeks we were there. Like, the true world elite, like many 515 rock climbers. And like when you're around people day in, day out who are sort of trying their hardest, you get to see that it's like they're not always just smashing either. And it's like, yeah, sometimes they're tired and they do worse. Sometimes the conditions just suck and they can go from like, one of the guys we were climbing with a bunch, his British guy, Buster Martin, was trying this 9B or 15B route, the full journey. And the first pitch of that is called The Journey. in his 15A, and he had red pointed that on a previous trip. And he had days where he was falling on the last hard move of the second pitch, like super, super close to sending. And then 2-3 days later, the conditions would be way worse, and he wouldn't be able to make it through the first pitch, and he'd fall low. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just like it didn't happen once. It would be like that would be the day. Like he'd be like, I'm not going to be able to make it through today. And so whether it's at the trip level or even at the attempt level, right? Like he didn't like become a worse rock climber. Or, he's not weaker. He's not less fit. He's not, it doesn't take away the fact that he's climbed through the journey now a bunch of times. I think he's still there trying. But, it doesn't negate any of those things. It's just like one of these many variables hadn't lined up that day. Maybe the conditions were worse. Maybe he was a little tired from efforts the previous day or 2 days before, or maybe, a lot of times on this trip, like, you do some damage to your skin, so you'd have to climb with tape, and a certain hold would feel way worse with tape. Like all of these things are variables, and like you can do your best to control them, but they do impact performance, but they don't change who you are as like a climber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to keep that in perspective in the moment when that's happening.
Yeah.
When you're like, I'm making negative progress here. What's wrong with me?
Right. Yeah, and it's like, it sucks. It's not fun in the moment, right? But I think it's like, it's good to like name those things and like point them out to yourself. Mm-hmm. Like, and even amongst your friends, like, and just say it. It's like, oh yeah, it feels too cold to me today. It feels too humid. It feels, I don't know. I feel tired. Like, it just is what it is. Like, and not really, I think the key is to like, it's almost like looking for these excuses essentially, and giving them to yourself so that it doesn't, if you're playing especially the hard red pointing game, you really need to protect your belief in that you're going to get it done. Because there's a lot of data points, right, that are telling you the opposite. Like, if you've been trying a route for 6 weeks, like that's a lot of tries, and a lot of tries where you're not sending. And so it like your underlying belief that you could get it done is, you need to sort of protect that against all the sort of these other data points. And you can do that by looking for, like, oh, I did this new link or this new high point or this new low point, or I felt better on this section, or I did all the moves now, or whatever, right? But even in those moments when you can't find like a small tangible bit of progress, like not just, it's not just like, oh, I didn't send, I failed. But even when you're like sort of objectively like, yeah, I kind of did worse today. Just finding ways to sort of say like, rationalize that to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And to accept it and have this kind of delusional optimism about the future.
I know it sort of sounds funny when I'm trying sort of not to laugh to myself when I'm describing these things, because it sort of sounds crazy, right? But I do think it's like, it's kind of what's required to get it done at anywhere near your limit, right?
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Like anyone who spent a bunch of time around rock climbers has is probably thinking to themselves right now of all the times that they've heard somebody be like, maybe it's sitting around a campfire or just hanging out or whatever, talking about how they think they're going to be able to get it done. And then you've seen them climbing on the route or the boulder or whatever. And you're like, I mean, I hope so, but like, it's not looking good. Right. And it's like, it's sort of funny to laugh about, but I think that's like, it's kind of important to have that, to give yourself that space.
Yeah. And I think that remembering those times about other people can be helpful too, because how many times have you heard that person say that and been like, I don't think he's got it. And then he sends
Oh, yeah.
or she or whatever, and you can kind of use that as fodder for yourself.
Yeah, no, completely. I'd actually say that more often than not, especially with like experienced rock climbers, when I hear people and I sort of have that reaction of like, maybe kind of thing, that like I end up being wrong. Like I'm not, like rock climbers are good at getting things done. Like it shouldn't surprise me, but it often still does that people get stuff done. And like, I mean, here's a crazy example. The Spanish climber, like Jorge Diaz-Rola, I think that's how his name's said, is trying a project in the Fenestra right now. And he's been trying it for, I think this is like 4th season. Or 4th year, maybe. Something like that. But it's going to be one of the hardest routes in the world. He's getting close on at least some of his attempts. But he's put like 215 days of effort into it now.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's pretty nuts. And it's, he is psyched and dedicated, and it's like he tries really hard, and it's inspiring to watch and see. But it's a good, it kind of puts it into perspective a little bit. Like the Via del Kim is also in the Fenestra sector, and so we're there a lot. And you're kind of sitting there being like, man, I've been here for a long time, been trying this route a lot.
You're like, but Jorge over there.
Yeah, you're like, well, I'm about 200 days behind. Yeah, and like, I would really like to not put another 200 days into the Via del Kim, but it does kind of put it into perspective, right? And like, Jorge's no slouch. Like he, climbed, he did like change, move, and another, mid 515 route in Norway all last year in like 6 weeks. So like, it's like multiple 15C routes in like 6 weeks. So it's not like he's bad at rock climbing, right? So you're like, yeah, sometimes sometimes it takes a lot for all those variables to line up perfectly.
Yeah, well, and it gives you an opportunity to reassess, like, where do I want to be on the continuum of my first try and Jorge's 215th day or whatever? Right. Like, how much of myself do I want to put into this?
Yeah.
And so.
Totally.
Cool. Well, I think that sometimes climbing around really, really strong climbers is super helpful. Like, honestly, it's been really interesting hearing your takeaways just from their experiences, and like being able to compare those to your own and glean something from that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hopefully people found that helpful.
All right. Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that talk with Coach Matt Pincus. If you would like to work with him to reach your own climbing goals, or to talk about a trip that's coming up, or anything you want to work on with him, he is doing a discounted rate right now. The lowest he's ever done, actually. He wants 6 new clients, and once those slots are filled up, this discount will be gone. Normally, he charges $295 per month for coaching, and this rate is $260, so you save $35 per month. And you can find that 3-month program at trainingbeta.com/12 weeks, all one word. In that, you'll get 3 4-week plans in your True Coach app. You'll get constant contact with him through that app. And you'll have 3 Zoom calls with him, 1 to get you started for 90 minutes, and then 2 more, 1 hour each, during the next 2 months. So again, you can find that at trainingbeta.com/12 weeks, all one word. Or if you just want to work with him for his normal rates on a monthly basis, you can go to trainingbeta.com/Matt. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for listening all the way to the end, and I'll talk to you next time.